Oh. And welcome back. Now we're going to talk about the NFC division. We felt last year that this actually was one of the most competitive divisions.
This was the best division last year. 3 playoff spots, and we already had one of the best stretches ever pulled by a team in the Rough Riders, but we'll get to them in a little bit. First, we're going to talk about the Super Bowl runner-ups, Bossman, who lost the heartbreaker last year to the Smash Mouth. And how did they do, Mike, coming back?
Well, it's very interesting. Pull off the trade for Marshawn Lynch, which is certainly going to help them out. I do think that they have the best running backs actually in this whole division when you look at Lynch, LaShawn McCoy, and Ray Rice when he comes back from suspension. But what concerns me is when I look at his roster, first of all, he doesn't have a lot of depth at the quarterback position because he only has Cam Newton. And Newton may be a question mark coming off the injury, and considering the lack of wide receivers that he actually no longer has on the squad that he had last year.
Benjamin is his number 1 there, and he hasn't caught a single NFL catch yet.
So he doesn't have a top-tier receiver. He has a bunch of number 2s, what you could say kindly at best. Vince Jackson had a very good year last year for Tampa. You feel pretty solid of that particular selection, but everyone else really is up in the air. Mike Wallace did not have a great year last year for Miami.
Yes, tell me about Mike Wallace not having a good year last year, Mike.
Yes, Morton Crabtree. So I don't see a lot of scare and a lot of depth really within his squad. Jason Witten is an okay tight end.
He's not a touchdown tight end.
Yeah, that's what we learned. He's not a touchdown tight end.
He's not a touchdown tight end. He'll catch 70 passes and 3 touchdowns. That's been his MO for the last few years. My question is, if Cam Newton is not a top 5 quarterback, what is he left with at that position? If Cam Newton doesn't do a top 5 quarterback, if he can't produce that value for him, it's a really gutsy move here. This isn't Drew Brees.
I would have to see Bossman actually do something in free agency this year.
Well, he's more than active every year in free agency, so
yes.
Rest assured he'll be on top of the first waiver wire pick to go.
Plus, he only has one offense, which is Washington. So he's going to have
banking
to make a move at some
banking
point.
on RG3 and not getting hit hard after failing to slide properly.
Yes. He's got a solid number 1 defense in San Francisco, which is his personal favorite.
Chicago is there because, I don't know, from 5 years ago they were good.
Yeah, we're hoping that they actually duplicate what they did 5 years ago.
I believe most teams are going to be happy when they see Chicago on their schedule.
But I don't think he's going to be starting Chicago much this year anyway. The strength of his team is going to be defensively and his running game. Other than that, I don't really see a lot of production out there.
It looks thin this year.
It looks very thin. Doesn't necessarily mean that it can't change, but outside of the defense he's got and the strong running backs he's got, nothing else really scares you.
Also, finish your draft. I'm pretty sure you have like 2 more players.
I think it's one more roster.
One more roster spot.
Because he took one already.
All right,
so,
finish your draft. Let's see. All right. So next up, we got the Rough Riders, who I'll tell the story here because I love talking about the Rough Riders season.
I know you do.
Last year, 7-0, best offense of all time. The combos, everything working out nicely. Then something went wrong. Somehow they lost their division and wanted to make a playoff game against the Pigskins, where Denver produces 21 points, and his roster is gutted by the Pigskins. And that's with a first-round playoff loss. A team that had every right to be a Super Bowl champion. Nothing. So, what do you think, Mike? How's the sequel looking?
Even more of a reason now for Ben to actually come back strong, and once again, he's relying heavily on Denver. When I look at this, Peyton Manning in Denver, he's expecting Denver to duplicate exactly what they did last year. It's going to be very hard for that to happen again, despite the firepower that they have. I'm not saying they're not going to be within contention, but I don't expect a record-breaking pace with this team. But looking at some of the position players that he's got with Thomas and Welker, he's putting his eggs in one basket. Even Prater has joined the fray. But what's even more scary is that he's got not only Denver's offense, but he's got Denver's defense.
50-50 combo.
That's right. He is going to be using a 50-50 combo. I have reason to believe the majority of the season, despite the fact that he's got Pittsburgh's defense. And unless he intends on using Pittsburgh's defense the majority of the season, I could see him doing 50-50s a lot.
Let's talk about my favorite thing about his roster, the backup running backs.
Unless you think Maurice Jones-Drew is going to start over McFadden, that's exactly what we're looking at here.
Ben Jarvis not starting. Jackie Rogers not starting. Bishop Stanky not starting yet. What are we doing here with these for week 1 running back?
Well, clearly to me, the production is going to come out of the quarterback position, and it's going to come out of the tight end position with Gronkowski, and he's got tremendous depth with his running backs. It's going to be a question of what he does with the flex if he elects to actually start Cruz or Larry Fitzgerald. So that's going to be the biggest question that he actually got. Perhaps he doesn't care too much about his running backs, and he cares about getting production out of Peyton Manning in Denver and his wide receiving core.
Just a heads up, Ben, Ronnie Hillman is available if you need another backup running back.
That is true, yeah. Another Denver player that's out there in case Monte Ball misses his position. You're right. Watch someone actually sign him in free agency before Ben does.
I don't know people were paying attention to this podcast, and I approve of that.
Yes. So not a lot of depth overall at the running back position. However, he's putting his eggs in one basket again with Denver.
Well, it's not a bad basket to put in the number one offense last year. Even if they don't score 37 points a game, you can expect them to still probably finish in the top 5 most likely. So, not a bad wagon to hitch for the sequel. Just not as strong, though, compared to his team last year. Just feels like something's missing. Maybe no Alfred Morris.
Yeah. Only
or
time.
Adrian Peterson.
Yeah. Only time will tell. Can't have them all.
Can't have them all. I agree.
Can't have them all.
Next up, we turn to System of the Down, the little engine that could. And after starting the year 1-5, the System of the Down rallied to make it back to the playoffs, leads their 3rd year in a row, and finished a respectable 3rd place finish. How do we feel about them, Mike, this year? Are they going to get over the hump finally?
I think they put their eggs in one basket with San Diego this year, a team that surprised a lot of people last year, and he's asking really San Diego to duplicate what they did. He was very high in Phillip Rivers, who had great production for me last year. That actually was a great steal. And he wound up taking him. He wound up drafting Novak as well, and San Diego's offensive line, Antonio Gates. So he's using that combination, and probably will be using a lot of that combination this year. He's got a great complement in Cincinnati's offense as well, which you know has the capability of putting up points. His running back position, though, is very, very weak.
I think we're asking a lot of Matt Forte.
Yeah, we're asking a lot out of Forte, who I don't think is going to have touchdowns in every single contest, and particularly on the road. He scores a lot more at home than he does on the road.
I hate the 3-handed quarterback we see here.
I'd be very curious, considering that he is relying heavily on the San Diego combination. It'll be curious to see when Ben Roethlisberger and Robert Griffith III actually get the opportunity to play. I reason to believe that maybe even one quarterback out of that fray is going to get the opportunity. The other one's going to be sitting on the bench for the majority of the year, unless, of course, that player is released.
Strong at wide receiver. I'll give him it's one of the best wide receiving cores in the league.
It's actually pretty good. You know, you expect good things out of Jordy Nelson this year. Antonio Brown actually is a pretty good steal. Terrence Williams came on very strong last year for the Dallas Cowboys.
Deshaun Jackson,
who was very high on during the draft. So it's a good, solid wide receiving core. Very weak, though, at the running back position.
Tight end this week. Antonio Gates could be overtaken for his job by the time the season rolls around.
Possibility. He's got good, 2 solid offenses. So the question is, how often is he going to be using San Diego's offense this year? And I also look at the defense as well, and I see Arizona. When I look at Arizona, they had a very good defense last year. The question is whether or not we feel that the Arizona Cardinals are going to duplicate the same exact type of season that they had last year.
He's carrying a lot in Arizona, so Philadelphia's good luck to you on that one.
Yeah, well, you know, you may get Philadelphia at a time or two this year where they actually play solid defense.
Week 1, Jacksonville. Damn, I play him this week. Why did I tell him that?
But overall, he is relying heavily on the San Diego combination this year. I expect him really to start San Diego the majority of the year.
It's not a bad roster for
Tom, wake up. I'm not boring you over there.
Yes, you are.
He's waiting for the XFC
He's waiting for his team.
Yes, I am.
We have nothing but, well, should we call it praise, or no, we never have praise for that.
Don't worry, we'll get to you eventually.
Okay, but let's turn to our last team while Tom's catching some Z's, and we have the Solamente up.
Who pulled off the trade for Jay Cutler. Actually, and he drafted Nick Foles, who had a very solid year last year. Yeah. So no issues with the quarterback position.
Well, let's talk about last year first with Solamente, who crash-landed last year.
Yeah, they did.
And I like to blame the culprit mostly on Houston's titanic defensive performance as a big responsibility for why this team failed to make the playoffs.
And you know, he drafted him once again.
Well, hey, I feel like he can improve after 2 wins, and I agree. The problem is I'm just so sure he'll get more than 4. But let's talk about the rest of them. Yes, quarterback is... Even without Aaron Rodgers, his roster looks naked without Aaron Rodgers. But Jay Cutler's excellent.
Still solid. It's more questions at the start during the week. So
we like a running back. This is one of the more interesting running back cores I think we've seen so far.
It's nothing that blows your mind out. But Doug Martin coming off the injury, we'll see exactly what he could produce. Monte Ball that he picked up in the trade as well. So there are a couple of question marks at the running back position that he's hoping that have solid years.
Props to Joique Bell, who could break out in Detroit.
That actually was a good late pick.
That was one of my favorite late draft picks.
And he's got Sproles too, that you could actually use the flex position. So not terrible overall. Maybe a few question marks, but I really don't have a problem with his running back selection as compared to some of the other teams.
Well, wide receivers where we run into the sinkhole.
Well, the wide receivers, Macklin coming off of the injury, but you got to admire the fact that he's got the Eagles combo with Foles, with Macklin, and with Zach Ertz. I think that's a good and with Sproles.
The combo potential there is smart. I really like having Foles here and just knowing he can get probably 12 for each Foles touchdown that's thrown this year.
Yeah. And he's banking a lot, though, on Jeremy Macklin this year coming off of the injury. Marcus Colston as well could have solid games, so no problem with Colston necessarily as a number 2 receiver. Kenny Stills is a good chance to have. He had a very good year last year for New Orleans.
As a 4th wide receiver, it's worth a risk.
Yeah, and Mike Evans, the rookie.
We just wish it was more. We just wish this wide receiving core had number 1 on their team.
Yeah,
There isn't.
There is a number 1. More chance selections out of it, but it's solid.
Offense. What to say? New Orleans.
Yeah.
I'm right at home.
Yeah. Top tier offenses in the league, no problems with that keeping them. And the Jets' offense is a good, solid backup. No issue there. The biggest question mark I got with the Solamente is the defense. Used to in the Giants, to expect big things out of the Giants this year, particularly defensively. These are 2 teams that primarily might not make the playoffs this year. So,
well, finishing in the top 15 even in defensive performance.
That's right. So this is going to be very interesting to see whether or not the production that he has with his offense is going to offset with what he's got defensively. We'll see if any changes are going to be made during the season, but right now, it's not looking very promising defensively.
All right, so let's finally rank how we feel this division is going to go. Number 1, we agree. We think that Ben will take a division title this year.
Despite the criticism that we have for Ben, we still feel that Ben is still solid. Despite the fact that he's relying heavily on Denver this year, we still like the depth that he has overall.
Number 2, we are going with the Solamente to finish second in the division.
Despite the defensive struggles, we still think he's a solid 2. We do like the depth that he's got, the running back and the wide receiving position, but the defenses are going to be very interesting this year.
Third place, we recommend System of the Down this year. We think System of the Down has some potential to climb, but we worry that they're just not as top heavy as they used to be in previous years. There's no all-star here that scares us.
He could possibly make a run at the wild card spot. Like I said, I'm very curious to see what he does defensively. We think that he may be a better defensive team than the Solamente. That may give him an edge over the Solamente. But he does not have a lot of depth at the running back position. His wide receiver, I think, is solid and maybe more advantageous as opposed to the Solomentes. So it could be a close second or third place, but at the moment we'll give the edge to the Solamente.
Yeah. Bringing up the rear, we go to the boss man. From first to worst, we're predicting this year.
Well, we don't see a lot of depth at the wide receiving position this year. The running backs are his solid play this year. He doesn't have a lot of depth at the quarterback position. He also needs another offense. He doesn't have a great backup at the defensive end. So, to me, we still feel he is the weakest link.
All right, with that in mind, stay tuned for the XFC.